Ever get lost in like your own family history? You stumble across a great-great-grandparent who was like a blacksmith or something, and suddenly you're picturing their whole life. Get ready to do that like times 1,000. Because today's deep dive takes us straight into the world of biblical genealogy, specifically the book of Chronicles, chapters 7, 8, and 9. Now, I know what you might be thinking, long lists of names, begats galore, maybe not the most thrilling read.
Right.
But trust me, these aren't just any family trees. We're talking warrior dynasties, political intrigue, and those little details that bring the past to life. Joining me, as always, is our expert guide to help us unpack all of this.
It's a pleasure to be here. You're right. These genealogies offer a fascinating glimpse into a world where lineage wasn't just about who you were related to, but also your place in society, your inheritance, even your destiny.
Okay, so let's just jump right in with the descendants of Issachar.
Yeah.
Now, Issachar is often associated with agriculture, right? A tribe known for its connection to the land. But when we, dig into the text, a different picture emerges, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. While Issachar's agricultural roots are well documented, we see a strong emphasis on their military prowess as well. The text describes valiant warriors among Issachar's descendants, reminding us that defending your land and resources often went hand in hand with military strength.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, we can grow it, but we can also defend it.
Exactly. And remember, these weren't small-scale skirmishes. We're talking about a time when armies numbered in the tens of thousands. Just think 22,600 descendants of Tola alone joined David's army.
Whoa, that's a lot of troops. Talk about a logistical challenge.
Right.
It really gives you a sense of the scale and importance of these, ancient conflicts. Now, moving on to the tribe of Benjamin, things get a little more complicated, even a bit scandalous. We encounter Shaharaim, who fathers children in Moab after sending his wives away. What's the story there? Give me the historical context.
It's a fascinating detail, that's for sure. It offers a glimpse into the kind of complex social and political landscape of the time. While the text doesn't explicitly state the reason for sending his wives away, it's possible this was a strategic move to secure alliances with the Moabites.
Okay.
Marriages, or in this case, separations, were often used to, forge political bonds and navigate the often treacherous waters of intertribal relations.
So it's like a high-stakes game of Risk, but with families instead of armies.
Precisely. And the fact that Shah-Harim had descendants in Moab would have had significant implications, right? It could have created a network of familial and political ties, potentially influencing trade, diplomacy, or even military alliances in the future.
Talk about a long game. But even with these family shakeups, one thing that remains consistent is the mention of these valiant warriors within Benjamin's lineage. We even see a reference to the sons of Elpal, who put the inhabitants of Gath to flight. Now, for those of us who need a little refresher, who exactly were the people of Gath and what makes this victory stand out?
Yes, the Philistines of Gath. They were a formidable force in the region, known for their military strength and advanced technology, particularly when it came to iron weaponry. They were a constant threat to the Israelites. In fact, you might remember them from the story of David and Goliath. Goliath himself was a Philistine champion from Gath.
Oh, right. So not your average foes then.
Not at all. The Philistines, especially their elite warriors, known as the Cherethites and Pelethites, were a force to be reckoned with. David himself even employed them as bodyguards at one point. So for the sons of Elpal to have overcome them in battle, that speaks volumes about their tactical skill and bravery.
It's like taking down a superpower. Speaking of powerful lineages, the line of Manasseh takes us down another intriguing path, one with a touch of, shall we say, scandal. We learned about Machir and his Aramean concubine. Now, help me understand the significance of concubines in this historical context. What made this relationship stand out, especially given that his concubine was Aramean?
This is where understanding the social dynamics of the time is crucial, right? Concubines occupied a complex position in ancient Israelite society. While their children could be considered legitimate heirs, they didn't hold the same social standing as wives. The fact that Machir's concubine was Aramean adds another layer to this story. The Arameans were a distinct cultural and ethnic group, often, at odds with the Israelites. This relationship suggests potential interactions and perhaps even conflicts between these different groups.
So it's not just a personal story, it reflects the broader political and cultural landscape of the time.
Exactly. These weren't just individual families, they were microcosms of a society grappling with shifting alliances, power dynamics, and the challenges of maintaining their identity in a, volatile world.
And sometimes those challenges hit very close to home, as we see with the story of Ephraim. We learn that he mourns his sons and then names his newborn son Beriah, which means misfortune.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a poignant example of how names weren't just labels in this ancient culture. They carried weight, meaning, and often reflected the hopes, fears, or even the sorrows of the time.
Yeah.
Naming a child misfortune speaks volumes about the grief and uncertainty of that period.
It's a stark reminder that even amidst these genealogies, real lives were being lived with all their joys and sorrows. Now, up until this point, we've been navigating these like sprawling family trees, but things take an interesting turn in Chronicles chapter 9. Instead of broad lineages, we suddenly zoom in on the specific inhabitants of Jerusalem. Why the sudden shift in focus?
Yeah.
What's so important about knowing who lived where in Jerusalem at this time?
Well, it's a shift that signifies a pivotal moment in, Israelite history. Remember, this is the period after the return from exile, and Jerusalem is being reestablished as the heart of the nation, both politically and religiously.
Right.
This detailed list of inhabitants, particularly the emphasis on priests, Levites, and gatekeepers, suggests a meticulous effort to rebuild not just the physical city, but also its, social and religious structures.
Yeah, it's like they're saying, look, we're back and we're reclaiming our heritage brick by brick, name by name.
Precisely. And it's not just about who lived there, but also their roles and responsibilities. The prominence given to priests, Levites, and gatekeepers highlights the importance of religious ritual and the safeguarding of the newly rebuilt temple.
Speaking of gatekeepers, I've always been curious about those roles. I mean, they're mentioned quite prominently in chapter 9. What was so important about guarding the gates, and what does it tell us about the kind of social hierarchy at the time?
That's a great question. Remember, in ancient cities, gates weren't just entry and exit points. They were symbolic thresholds, representing access to power, security, even sacred spaces.
Right.
The gatekeepers of Jerusalem, particularly those guarding the temple, weren't just guards. They were entrusted with maintaining order, ensuring ritual purity, and safeguarding the treasures of the holiest site in the land.
So it was a position of great responsibility. You had to be trustworthy, reliable, kind of like the ancient equivalent of the Secret Service.
Exactly. They were the guardians of the city's physical and spiritual well-being, their roles intricately woven into the fabric of daily life and religious observance.
Right. It makes you wonder what those guys talked about during their shifts, right? Yeah. Did you catch the high priest's sermon today? Man, the frankincense is strong in there this week.
Perhaps. It's a good reminder that even within these seemingly rigid social structures, there were always human stories, moments of humor, and the mundane aspects of everyday life.
Absolutely. Speaking of human stories, let's circle back to a figure whose life was anything but mundane, King Saul. As we've been weaving through these genealogies, his name keeps popping up, and I'm struck by how much emphasis is placed on his lineage, even though his reign ultimately ended in tragedy. What's the significance of this repetition?
It's a fascinating question, one that has, intrigued scholars for centuries.
Yeah.
One theory is that the repetition might stem from different sources being compiled. Remember, these texts weren't written in a vacuum. They were often the result of centuries of oral tradition and written records being sort of woven together. So the repetition could reflect a merging of different strands of Saul's family history, each emphasizing different aspects of his lineage.
So it's like a literary puzzle where scholars are trying to piece together the original sources and understand why certain details were included or repeated.
Precisely. It's a bit like being a textual detective, looking for clues to uncover the layers of history embedded in these ancient writings.
Right.
Another interpretation is that the repetition might be a kind of deliberate literary device to emphasize Saul's significance and the enduring impact of his reign, even though it ultimately ended in tragedy.
Okay.
It's a way of acknowledging the complexity of his story, the triumphs and failures that, shaped his legacy.
It reminds us that history is rarely black and white. Even the most powerful figures are complex individuals with their own motivations, flaws, and legacies that continue to resonate long after they're gone. And speaking of legacies, there's a poignant connection to the story of David that I think is worth highlighting. Remember Meribal, also known as Mephibosheth, who features prominently in David's life? Well, he was actually a descendant of Saul.
That's right. Meribal was the grandson of Saul, the son of Jonathan, who was David's closest friend.
Right.
Despite the kind of tragic history between their families, David showed great kindness and loyalty to Meribal, welcoming him to his court and restoring his inheritance.
It's a powerful reminder that even in the midst of, ancient rivalries and political turmoil, acts of compassion and forgiveness could emerge.
Absolutely. These genealogies aren't just about bloodlines and battles. They're about the enduring power of human relationships, the complexities of loyalty and betrayal, and the threads of connection that bind us together across generations.
Speaking of connections, one of the things that strikes me as we delve into these ancient texts is the reminder that history isn't just something that happened a long time ago.
Right.
It's alive in the stories we tell, the traditions we keep, and even the names we pass down through generations. It's like those echoes of the past are still whispering to us today.
That's beautifully put. And it's especially true when we think about the recurring themes of loss and resilience that we see in these genealogies. We see it in the stories of exile, in the poignant names given to children born into difficult circumstances, and even in the genealogies themselves, which often seem to list those who have passed on as a way of, remembering and honoring their legacy.
You're right, these weren't just names on a page. They were real people who faced incredible challenges, who knew joy and sorrow, who built lives and families amidst uncertainty. It makes you think about the stories contained within our own family trees, the triumphs and tragedies, the migrations and milestones that have shaped who we are today.
Precisely. And often it's in those seemingly insignificant details, the forgotten names, the whispers of past struggles, that we find the most profound connections to our own histories and identities.
It's like those old photo albums we all have tucked away somewhere, filled with faded pictures and handwritten notes on the back.
Yeah.
We might not recognize all the faces or understand all the stories, but there's a sense of connection, a reminder that we're part of something much bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. These genealogies, in their own way, are like those photo albums, offering glimpses into the lives and legacies of those who came before us. And just like those albums, they invite us to piece together the fragments, to ask questions, and to discover the threads of connection that bind us to the past and shape our understanding of the present.
It makes you wonder, what will people say about our generation when they look back at our digital family trees centuries from now? What stories will be told, and what legacies will we leave behind?
No, those are questions worth pondering. It seems the further we delve into the past, the more we realize how connected we are to the hopes, struggles, and resilience of those who came before us.
Absolutely. It's funny how we often approach these ancient texts with a sense of detachment, thinking, oh, that was then, this is now.
Yeah.
But as we've seen today, tucked within these genealogies are stories that, like, resonate across time and cultures. We find echoes of our own desires for belonging, our need to make sense of loss, and our drive to build a better future for those who come after us.
It's the power of these texts, isn't it?
Yeah.
They invite us to kind of engage with the past, not as a dusty relic, but as a living tapestry woven with threads that connect us all.
Beautifully said. And you know what else strikes me as we kind of wrap up our deep dive into these warrior lineages?
Mm.
It's the reminder that strength and resilience come in many forms. Yes, we've encountered mighty warriors and strategic alliances,
Right.
but we've also witnessed the quiet strength of those who rebuilt their lives after exile, who raised families amidst uncertainty, and who, through their everyday acts of courage and determination, ensured the continuation of their families and their traditions.
Precisely. It's a reminder that history is shaped not only by, grand gestures and epic battles, but also by the countless acts of everyday heroism that often go unnoticed, but form the very foundation of our shared human story.
And, thinking about these seemingly insignificant details that we've been, uncovering today, the names, the places, the family ties, it reminds me that our lives are being woven into that tapestry of history too.
Yeah.
Our choices, our relationships, the challenges that we face, and the ways we overcome them, they all contribute to a story that extends far beyond ourselves.
That's a powerful thought, isn't it? We are all part of a much larger narrative, a continuum that stretches back through time and will continue long after we're gone. And just as we found meaning and connection in exploring the lives of those who came before us, future generations might one day find themselves tracing our footsteps, piecing together the fragments of our lives, and discovering the threads that connect them to who we were.
It makes you think about what those threads might reveal, what stories our own genealogies would tell. Maybe there's a blacksmith in your family tree, or a skilled artisan, or even, dare I say, a warrior or two.
Right?
Whatever stories are woven into your family history, they're part of what makes you uniquely you.
So as we leave you today, we encourage you to embrace your place in this grand narrative, explore your own family history, ask questions, and listen for the echoes of the past that resonate in your own life. You might be surprised by the stories you uncover, the connections you make, and the insights you gain about yourself and the world around you.
Beautifully said. And who knows? Maybe you'll even discover a hidden talent for deciphering ancient genealogies. Until next time, happy digging.
Welcome to Charlie and Mia's podcast. We're embarking on an exciting journey to read through the entire Bible in just 1 year. Every day, we dive into Scripture, exploring its meanings and how it applies to our lives today. We invite you to join us on this incredible adventure of learning and discovery. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode.